Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Mr. Denny Carter and Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, where we are going to preview the entire Week 12 slate, not including the Thanksgiving games. Denny and I got to that on Monday/Tuesday's episode. So if you're looking for a preview of the old Turkey Day, check out the most recent episode of this podcast. But we're going to get into the whole thing, beginning with Black Friday. We got a game on Friday now. Yay. The Dolphins at the Tim Boyle starting Jets. And Denny and Kyle, producer Adam is reminding us for the show. So we've talked a lot on the pod in recent weeks. Like every show, I spend 45 minutes talking about. Have you guys heard that the Lions aren't going to be the bad team in the Thanksgiving game for once? You guys, anybody else following this? You guys heard this? And you're like, yeah, I mean, who cares really? Because they're still a bad team in this game. The Green Bay Packers, who have played 2 straight good games, actually. But Adam reminded us that Tim Boyle, the new Jets savior, who has never had a good box score going back to even high school, at one time played for our Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, and just how far this franchise has come. And how thankful are you that now the Lions are good, even though their defense is bad and they could be huge frauds?
Well, look, I think it is worth talking about because it's not like we're saying, oh, hey, the Lions are good for the first time in 10 years. The Lions are good for the first time in 20 years. No. We're not saying that at all. We're saying they're good for the first time since literally Kennedy. Okay,
so look up Kennedy if you don't know who that is.
So I never in my lifetime have I watched a Lions Thanksgiving game where they have been good. Right? Even the Barry Sanders Lions were terrible. Okay,
They were.
And all of the Thanksgivings where you sit down and you know what's going to happen. There's a predictability about it, right? Remember the time the Patriots came in and immediately went up 28-0 in the first quarter against Detroit. I mean, these were humiliating games. There was a Chris Johnson, Lendell White Tennessee game against the Lions in 2008 where they rushed for 400 yards or something. Just the most ludicrous, embarrassing situations for the Lions on Thanksgiving, but no more. It's over for the first time in our lives.
Just going back through some of these recent Lions starting quarter. I mean, yeah, David Blau
was the player you needed in Showdown that week, or not in Showdown, but in the 3-game slate. Yeah. I remember that. The Lions have been so bad so many times on Thanksgiving that they had an Adrian Peterson 2-touchdown game. They had a LeGarrette Blount 2 or 3 touchdown game because every time they show up to Thanksgiving, they've been dreadful, which means a bunch of guys who you don't want to play in fantasy are going to get in the box score. And it makes the most miserable DFS slates possible.
Oh, that's true. Even in redraft, you're so excited. All right, there's 3 games today. We get some early fantasy action this week. And you sit down, I have no one in this game.
Yeah, right.
Obviously, never once played a player from this. I guess Calvin Johnson.
No. Well, I kind of disagree. I know what you're saying, Pat, but I also disagree because there have been times where I have agonized over whether to play a guy against Detroit because you just know the Lions were going to lay down. It's it's early in the morning. No one really wants to be around, it's a Thanksgiving morning game. And so you're oh, can I play this fringe player? Is it possible he gets there? So that actually was kind of agonizing. Oh, and Stafford's starting him on Thanksgiving was torturous.
It was absolutely torture. He was always playing through a sprained thumb or something.
Always.
And he would
depart at halftime all the time.
Oh, yeah. Constantly. His teammates would carry him around the field throughout the game, and you're just as someone starting him fantasy, please just keep carrying him. Please just get under center and keep throwing it to Calvin Johnson.
What was the game I think where they were literally carrying him on Thanksgiving? That's actually not an exaggeration.
No, I remember.
I was gonna say was the Thanksgiving. Was the Thanksgiving game the one where he dislocated his shoulder or something and had to, oh man, that one. Please tell me Calvin Johnson versus Des Bryant was on Thanksgiving or any of these good games.
No, they could never play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving since they both host games.
Duh, they have to play the other one. So what, they just play terrible games all the time? I was looking, they've won 10 games or more in my entire lifetime twice.
Wow. That's
they've never won they haven't won a playoff game in my lifetime.
We are thankful for relevant Lions football on Thanksgiving. We really hope Jordan Love and the Packers don't screw it up. How the tables have turned as the Packers are the bad team on Thanksgiving, but they're getting better. But we digress. We move on to Friday, and a monument to American commerce. The Miami Dolphins and New York Jets will square off in East Rutherford, New Jersey, on what is known as, quote, Black Friday, to try to get the Jets record out of the red as they transition from Zach Wilson to a somehow even worse aforementioned Tim Boyle. Kyle, we'll just start there. Is there any reason whatsoever to expect things to change with the Jets offense with Tim Boyle? Or will we maybe see some Trevor Siemian on Friday?
Oh, yeah, we could definitely see some Trevor Siemian. That is absolutely possible. You know what, though? I was shocked, stunned, because you were right when you pointed out, you look at Tim Boyle's box scores, even in college.
Well, yeah, Kyle, so everyone knows to look at the Tim Boyle Pro Football Reference. Everyone knows that to go see how bad it is. They forget about the sports reference, the college stats. You got to check that out, too. You got to check out the whole Tim Boyle reference package when studying Tim Boyle.
You and I especially are like, oh man, the old Tim Boyle, like, of course, the new Tim Boyle, it's nice. Like, I do like where the direction he's gone. But if you pull up the vinyls from the 90s for Tim Boyle,
exactly.
Those things are...
They just sound things, they just hit different.
They hit different. Producer Adam says, fellow NBCer Connor Rogers says, it is very likely Siemian will play if Boyle struggles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How likely do you think it is that Boyle struggles? The funniest thing about all of this is that Boyle, I think, first entered the league about 5 years ago. And since then, he ranks 76 in EPA per drop back. That's close to the bottom. It's like 15 to 20 within the bottom. Zach Wilson is worse. Zach Wilson is also worse by completion percent over expected. That stunned me because the point I was trying to make with Tim Boyle is that all of his box scores are dreadful. He just continues to throw interceptions and offers no upside. And I think the answer to this is that he hasn't taken any sacks. He's like taken 2 career sacks. And one of the sort of pillars of bad quarterback play is Zach Wilson, shows is the constant sack taking. So I actually think the difference between the two, as you sort of alluded to, they're just different flavors of terrible. And I test Tim Boyle's probably worse. I'm not going to say like the EPA test, they're close enough that pick whoever you think is worse and you might be right. I'll say Tim Boyle's worse, but I don't think it really matters. He's almost certainly going to target Garrett Wilson a ton, and Breece Hall will get all the carries and some good targets, and that's about it.
I think that is the only place where it matters, Kyle, is they're about equally bad. But we knew that Zach Wilson's level of ineptitude at least involved targeting Garrett Wilson 10 to 12 times a game. We just don't know what the baseline is even going to be with Tim Boyle. Like, is he going to be able to target Garrett Wilson 10 to 12 times a game, or is he going to be targeting Tyler Conklin a bunch? Is he going to be targeting the slot a bunch? That is a big concern with, even if we think he's as bad or maybe slightly better, slightly worse than Zach Wilson, we're like ripping up that baseline and starting over. So that's why I did plunge Garrett Wilson in the rankings this week. I feel like that's the big concern with the quarterback change. Denny, do we have any concern about Tua on the road against this elite Jets defense? The Dolphins' home road splits are very, very, I can't think of the word.
Concerning.
Noticeable, provocative. Any concern at all against the Jets defense that finally kind of crumbled in week 11? It's an elite defense, but when you're under so much pressure from your own offense,
right,
there's only so much you can do, and they crumbled against the Bills, allowed 32 points.
Well, look, I do think that if the Dolphins can, they're just going to establish it here because the Jets are among the 2 or 3 most extreme run funnel defenses in the league. We saw James Cook have a decent game last week against them. They're a good pass defense, so allowing the 8th lowest EPA per dropback. Tua, like you said, has struggled on the road. Tua probably has a fine floor here. I mean, you're not like starting a waiver wire guy over him, but I would be surprised if Raheem Mostert and whoever serves as the RB2 doesn't see a lot of touches in this game.
So Kyle, Denny kind of mentioned the Dolphins backfield there. What is your feel on if Devin Achane plays in this game? Or again, they tried to act like it was precautionary in week 11, but it's the same knee. It's the same guy who we've talked about has to be very finely calibrated to probably have success at the NFL level. Do you think he'll play? If he doesn't play, is it just all Raheem Mostert?
Yeah, my bet's on him not playing, and I would think it'd be mostly Raheem Mostert. We saw it in the final 2 non-Achane games. The backups were mostly irrelevant. They were combining for somewhere around a dozen combined touches a game, and Raheem Mostert was clearly not even the 1A. He was a 1, and that was about it. So maybe one of them gets in the end zone, especially, Tim Boyle starting opposite. You could have really positive game script to the point where Salvon Ahmed gets 12 fourth quarter carries. But that could also be Jeff Wilson. I believe he was healthy scratched last week, but they were using him when he was active as much, if not slightly more than Ahmed. So I don't really think there's value to be mined in the backups here. And I think we're absolutely ranking Raheem Mostert as a top 12 fantasy back again.
I think the same thing. But I will say, with talk about hitting different. All 32 teams being active, it's like, wow. I actually have to rank good players below their slot, maybe. Whereas man, I'm not really sure if Rachaad White's the RB3 this week, but got to do it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it is. Thankfully, there's a lot more depth in the ranking this week. A lot more depth in the show. Many games to go, but we will be right back after this. Give a fantasy sports fan on your list the Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle and take advantage of our biggest Black Friday deal ever. Buy today and receive the 2024 baseball, football, and basketball draft guides for one low price. Plus, use promo code BF2023 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics e-gift card. Buy today at NBCSports.com/holiday bundle. The Saints and Falcons come off bye with increasingly desperate Atlanta operating as 1-point home favorites thereabouts. The lines are shifting. It's early in the week, Denny. What kind of Falcons offense are we expecting after they committed to Bijan Robinson in week 10, but benched Taylor Heineke during the off week?
Yeah, wow. I mean, and they're definitely going to go back to Heineke at some point. So we're just going to have to wait on that. Well, look at the Falcons with the same old Falcons against the Cardinals, 20% under their expected drop back rate against Arizona. So, we know what we're getting here. We finally got the Bijan Robinson game.
So Denny goes to New York City one time and comes back with a real fancy Bijan Robinson pronunciation.
Look, he changed. We have to wait till he has a bad game before he changes his name again.
Good point.
So Robinson out carried Algier 22-9 in week 10, including getting most of the inside the 10 work. I will say, it's none of my business, but Algier had better metrics than Robinson.
Cut his mic. This isn't even a bit. Just cut it. Get him out of here.
Sorry if that upsets people, but it's true. So Robinson, look, his pass game involvement is weird, right? Because he trails only Rachaad White in pass routes among running backs.
He's a weapon, baby. He's a weapon.
So yes, he's running and he's getting good exercise. But he's only targeted.
Such a hater.
Where's my God now? He's only targeted on 16% of his routes. It's not great. So he can definitely get by. And if that usage holds up, which honestly, I feel like it's a bit of a leap to say, like Arthur Smith, Susan Collins would say, Arthur Smith learned his lesson. And maybe he didn't. Maybe Arthur Smith didn't learn his lesson.
Of course he didn't learn his lesson.
The bye came at the worst possible time for lesson learning. It's like, no, it's the children who are wrong. It's the children, not me. And Tyler Algier we're going to put the football team on the back of Tyler. And the Falcons are down 17-0 here early in the second quarter, Kyle. Did you have anything to add there, Kyle Dvorchak?
No, he pretty much got it.
He did. Denny made the most important point. We cannot assume that usage is going to hold. I'm kind of ranking him as if it will. But that bye week, kidding aside, was really poorly timed. And now they're going back to Desmond Ridder, so why would they not just run the same kind of offense they're running before? It is very concerning. You do kind of have to hedge Bijan Robinson this week. Kyle, speaking of backfields, what is going on in the Saints backfield? Things were getting a little weird before the bye. Alvin Kamara's usage had gotten ever slightly so shaky, or the floor had come down a little. It's not like it had crashed or anything. Anything changing in the New Orleans backfield?
Yeah, even in those games, he was still dominating the carries and obviously dominating targets. Really, when you're looking at his share of the rush attempts, the only thing that had changed is the second week before their bye, we saw a ton of Taysom Hill usage. But even the week after that, that's when we got rug pulled, actually, if you remember. If we rewind the tapes, you'll see us getting rug pulled by the Taysom Hill usage. Yes, so it was still, I think, a dozen targets over his past two games and 18 carries over his past two games. So really no concerns for me. He's still the workhorse. The games just didn't quite allow for it. And there was some Taysom Hill sprinkled in specifically one game and not the other one. So I'm not concerned at all. The talent discrepancy between him and his backups is so great. And the usage completely conveyed that talent discrepancy. So no concerns really for me on Alvin Kamara. As easily, we talk about, I haven't done my rankings yet, so I should probably look at this, but he's got to be an RB1, right? I'm going to name 15 guys. He's got to be an RB1, right?
Yeah, I know. It is tougher this week.
It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird.
It was weird. I spent all morning doing it. Denny, our never-ending national war between Rich Rebar and Chris Olave kind of reached a fever pitch in Week 10, where Chris Olave was immediately sparked by Jameis Winston, 6 catches, 94 yards, a touchdown, after struggling the whole afternoon with Derek Carr. It seems like Derek Carr is coming back against the Falcons. We don't entirely know for sure. We're recording on Tuesday. Where are we at with Reeves and Olave? Who's winning the argument right now?
Yeah, the war rages on. I will say, from a game watching standpoint, Chris Olave looked way more into the game when Jameis Winston was in there. Okay, he looked like he wanted to be around, which is new, I think, for Chris Olave this season. But yeah, I mean, you look at Jameis's average depth of target, 15.5. Derek Carr's this season, his 8.5. So it's a big difference.
That's despite 8.5 not even low either. 8.5 is very reasonable. We'll say Jameis just plays like a lunatic, and it's so fun. It's so good.
So weird. Carr takes a lot of the deepest shots, at least over 20 yards, and it's just not making big plays for Chris.
Well, they're bad though. They're all bad throws, and I think Olave's just kind of sick of it. Olave in Week 10 against the Vikings before their bye week, 41% air yard share, had a nice game. Jameis starting makes Olave really exciting. Carr starting makes him a little less exciting, but you're like you said, Pat. I mean, Derek Carr is still trying the downfield stuff. Maybe one day it'll hit.
Maybe one day he tries it doesn't work, and then he yells at Chris Olave, and then Jameis come in and just immediately completes many passes to him. Yeah. It doesn't yell at him. You can kind of see why maybe Chris Olave looked like he preferred the Jameis experience.
By the way, that cross field pass that Jameis had against the Vikings.
I was hoping someone would bring it up.
So just real quick, I for some reason the reaction to that was, "Oh, what a catch!" And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? What a catch! It's the greatest throw I've seen in 10 years." And everyone, that's an amazing catch by Olave. What? No, I'm sorry, by the A.T. Perry or whatever.
A.T. Perry.
Was that one A.T. Perry? Yeah.
Right.
For reference, the one you're talking about, right, is like a red zone pass where Jameis rolls to his left, is surveying, and throws like he's pretty close to the left sideline and throws across the field entirely, almost to the right pylon. A missile. Like it covered like vertically 10 or 15 air yards. I don't remember exactly. And the width of a football field's 55 yards, right? Is that right?
Something like that. Who cares? It doesn't
covered every yard of the width and got there on a line so A.T. Perry could get it. It's like peak Jameis, and we deserve to see at least a few more games.
I wish we could.
We will.
I'll tell you all week who has not stopped watching up throws, Brock Purdy, to just some unpaid again. Like, Brock, you've already watched it 428 again, and it replays it again, and he's just sweating profusely. I won't get any more detailed than that, but he's watching it a lot.
Please don't.
He's begun. Yes, he hasn't trimmed his fingernails in 6 weeks. Only watching that. I'm just gotta really move on.
It's the Howard Hughes situation.
I was going for Howard Hughes, then I was like, I sound like I'm going for something else. No. Like I got to bring it back to Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
He's Howard Hughes watching that play over and over again. We are Howard Hughes. Moving on, no segue there. In a game that has lost nearly all purpose since Joe Burrow's season-ending injury, the Bengals host the Steelers as roughly 1-point underdogs. Kyle Dvorchak, just how damaging is Burrow's absence going to be for an already struggling fantasy superstar, Ja'Marr Chase?
This feels like the end. This feels like it's about over. Like we saw banged up Joe Burrow struggle to get Ja'Marr Chase going early in the year, and that player was still a lot better than we're going to see from Jake Browning. So you're still starting him because I still think he will be the beginning and end of this team's passing attack. But like you're still starting him in the way that you start Garrett Wilson, and you go like, I'm praying for that one long one that gets him to 80 scoreless yards on 6 catches. It feels like the floor here has fallen to like, what's Garrett Wilson's floor? It's like 2 catches a week is the floor. So I think I know for me at least, he's still a starting fantasy option, but he fell from being like top 3, top 4 at worst, really, to being he's a wide receiver 2, probably. Is he?
What do you think?
There are a lot of teams playing this week. We have 45, I think, teams now.
I'm not a rankings.
Up to 45. Yeah.
I'm not a rankings bro, but I would struggle to put him above.
Here's a good one. Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams or
I have Devontae
Jamar
ahead
Chase?
of him. I do have
Wait,
Devontae ahead
what?
of him.
No. I think Devontae way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Easily,
like 4
yeah.
or 5 spots. For now, I have Jamar Chase still as like the lowest end wide receiver 1. I think I'm as a wide receiver 12, just because it's not a game environment that's going to get away from the Steelers. They could really pound the Bengals with the run and have some stuff open up in the passing game. And Jake Browning can have one assignment: target Jamar Chase. Target Jamar Chase, young man. And that's why I'm giving him at least 1 week probation in the really low end. I actually wide receiver 13, so right outside wide receiver 1. But I don't. You're not going to outright bench Jamar Chase. I don't think anyone is.
No.
Yeah, so I still have him in that wide receiver 1-2 borderline. 1 week on probation. It's not over yet for Jamar Chase, Denny. It is over probably for Deontay Johnson as Kenny Pickett sinks through the crust of the earth. But I wrote that before they fired Matt Canada. What might change? Is there a chance for a revival for Deontay Johnson, who has not been PPR scamming the past 2 weeks?
Listen, I have talked to my interns, and Deontay Johnson apparently is going to be in the regression files this week. Okay. And here's why. Look, I don't think things can get any worse, especially after them firing Matt Canada. Like I really think that we could see something of not a resurgence. I'm trying to avoid that word. I just said it anyway. But just something to get this offense going, some middle of the field throws, which Kenny Pickett has not made at all over the past few weeks. And Deontay is dominant right now. 55% of the team's air yards over the past 3 weeks, 26% of the targets. I mean, that's crazy. That's the crazy opportunity. He's not doing anything with it, and they're very poor throws, and the team is establishing the run like it's 1978. But I do think that you can probably still start him in 12-team leagues.
Probably. I've got him right on that 3-4 borderline. Kai, I know you haven't done your rankings yet, but I have Deontay like around wide receiver 40. And that's one part of the board where you really, really notice the no bye weeks this week as a receiver is a lot deeper in like the 24 to 40 range. And there was just every guy that it was Deontay or this guy. There was some reason to make it be this guy and not Deontay. I have him behind Josh Downs this week. I have him behind, even though Josh Downs is playing like one leg. Have him behind Rashee Rice. Have him behind Drake London. Have him behind Brandon Cooks in that really good Commanders matchup.
Yeah.
I have him behind Demario Douglas.
I was trying to get excited for the matchup because the Bengals are really weak against the slot. But I looked into it strongly, guys, and Deontay Johnson doesn't run any slot routes.
You'd think so because he plays functionally. He's like a slot receiver.
He's like America's idea of a slot receiver. Like,
he does. I know. I was like, wait, no. What is going on here? Apparently, he never operates from the slot.
Wow. Nope. They should look into that. Whoever the new offensive coordinator is, whoever not Matt Canada is, should maybe look into some slot routes for Deontay Johnson over Calvin Austin. I have Jalen Warren ranked ahead of Najee in the ranks, even though the starting thing isn't really going that well. Najee keeps out touching and out snapping him. Kyle, it turns out Najee had been winning the PPR war, by the way. I know we were debating this, like who was actually scoring more points. Jalen has outscored him on the year. Najee's been outscoring him in PPR lately, though. But I think it's the week where Jalen kind of decisively moves ahead, especially a new offensive coordinator. I guess a new offensive coordinator could go either 1 or 2 ways. We're going to fully commit to Najee. Or we got to try new things, and we got to fully commit to Jalen Warren. What do you think's more likely?
Yeah, I will say Warren, obviously with the 75-yard touchdown, beat Najee last week, but he also beat him the week before that. And like you said, he's outscoring him in PPR, and I think half PPR as well, mostly because Najee's actually not been like terrible this year. Like he is a fine between the tackles grinder. He's like hovering around 30th in a lot of the advanced metrics. The problem is the opportunity cost of benching Jalen Warren is so freaking high because he's so good. He leads the NFL in rush yards over expected. He leads in PFF's yards after contact. He's also top 10 success rate. So it's not like he's boom bust and that juices the numbers, which would still be good. He's also just consistently gaining more yards than expected versus Najee Harris. Has it turned into him being the starting running back in a way we care about, where he out carries Najee Harris? You would think the starter, he's on the field first and he's getting more snaps, would get more carries than the non-starter. The Steelers don't seem to have this concept down, as Najee still tightly, but out carrying him every week and typically out snapping him. So he's like, it's not even a 1A, 1B. I think they're a true 50-50 committee in which one of the guys is significantly more efficient than the other, Jalen Warren, and you should rank him ahead. But the fact that it's still a very clear committee means that you, like, if you gave Jalen Warren what we would call the starting role, I'd have him probably ranked as like the RB 15, 14. He's super efficient and he would be getting a ton of work. He's not getting a ton of work. I think he's probably, he's an RB2 for me because he's just that good. And Najee's on probably the 3-4 border. But the lack of a role, despite starter, not starter, game script, no game script, I don't have faith in the Steelers making the correct decision because they've had up until now to do it. I get that they fired their offensive coordinator. I don't have faith in the backup either. Maybe I'm just bitter, but we've seen this time and time again. So I don't want to jump to a conclusion until we see it.
Yeah, I have Jalen as low-end RB2. Najee is mid-range RB3. And this game is really just the probation bowl of the week. We Bengals, by the way, we don't even know if T. Higgins is coming back. T. Higgins could be coming back. I'm throwing another wrench into this, but we got to see how things unfold with one game with Jake Browning under center and how things unfold with the Steelers. And finally, a new offensive coordinator. The Eagles participate in the game of the century for the second consecutive week, this time hosting the Bills as 3 or 4 point home favorites. Denny, we already talked about this a little on Monday's show, but what do you think fantasy managers can expect going forward from the Bills' new look offense, one now led by Mr. Joe Brady? I know you think Ken Dorsey did nothing wrong.
He did nothing, and we're taking it to the Supreme Court, folks, to reinstate him, actually, as the offensive coordinator. We're going to look into that. Look, the Bills' new offensive philosophy is literally, it's called "Don't Get Bored," okay? And they're begging our beautiful boy Josh Allen not to make mistakes.
They got a bunch of jangly keys on a string. They're saying, "Look, Khalil Shakir, ring-a-ling-a-ling," and Josh is like, "I like that. Don't do anything dumb."
And I just from a football standpoint, I think this is a mistake, and I think that this team is just desperately trying not to lose, and that doesn't work. So good luck to the Bills. They're going to need it. First game under their new offensive coordinators, Josh Allen had a 6.8 ADOT. That's way under his 8.5 ADOT on the season. Only 9% of his throws went 20 yards in the air. That's 3 of 32 attempts went 20 plus yards in the air. They're still pass heavy, but also Josh Allen is only averaging 2 design rushes per game this year. And that stinks for fantasy as well. So I do think like that massive ceiling has kind of been lopped off of Josh Allen with this "don't mess up" or whatever it is, don't get bored approach.
Which, at least when they do the "don't get bored" of Josh Allen, he still makes some big plays. They did it with Zach Wilson, and our man's got benched.
Yes, right. That's a good point. Like, okay, Zach Wilson is not throwing a lot of interceptions, but that just means that he's not trying passes that can actually move the ball downfield.
As you may have, I've tweeted about this earlier this week. Like, I thought it was even more concerning. He has only 4 touchdowns since week 2. He had only 3 picks.
Yeah.
You got to let the man like throw the ball a little bit.
Right.
I know it's Zach Wilson, but let him throw a little bit. Kyle, Denny got in this a little bit talking about the Bills' new look offense, but is it no longer Jover for James Cook? Tied his season high with 17 carries in week 11. This was a game they totally dominated and controlled, of course, but he reproved his worth in that crazy week 10 Monday night game. Came out, had another good game in week 11. Have we survived like the James Cook scare, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of pointed out something that I think underlies or underscores the high rushing volumes. They dominated that game. They had a negative 6% pass rate over expected. They were extremely run heavy. I think that's mostly because the opponents, the Jets in this game, were like, they don't care. They're not going to put up any points. We can run, we can pass, we can punt. Let's get a few points on the board. Our opponents doesn't have a chance once we get to like 17 or something like that. So I don't really blame teams for going run heavy, even over expectation, when they play opponents that do not do anything on offense. But with that being said, that makes his raw stats look really good, but it was his second lowest snap share of the season, his third lowest carry share, and his third lowest route rate. The snaps the carry. The snaps and the carries don't concern me as much because they had a final drive or so that was like Ty Johnson carries and a few kneel downs, which gets lopped in with carries. So I'm not concerned as much about that. But they weren't passing on those drives. So the route rate, which was his third lowest of the season, that's true. That is not obscured by garbage time in almost any way. He still isn't running routes. So, I mean, he's still running basically the same number of routes as Latavius Murray. So, I mean, if they run the ball more, but I don't think they'll run the ball more in this game, not like they did last week, I think he's still a committee guy. I mean, we'll have to see what they do in a game that looks normal, but the underlying metrics last week showed no difference between who he had been. It was purely raw volume, which was good, but also is possibly less sustainable.
Kyle, we got asked about this on Monday evening in our waivers chat. Are we cutting bait on Leonard Fournette in 12 teams?
Of course. Of course.
One more week. Just one more week.
Man, I do. I'm praying for and I'm thinking of the best ball bros at this time.
We're taking them. Thank you. We'll take your prayers.
Either of you have anything to say about the Eagles? They're basically the most stable, predictable team in fantasy. We finally got a down game for A.J. Brown. We kind of unsurprisingly got an up game for Devontae Smith with Dallas Goedert out with his arm. Yeah, Dallas Goedert, I don't know, maybe could play this week. They're acting like he might come back. But anything at all to say about this super stable, predictable Eagles offense?
They're gaslighting us so hard on Dallas Goedert. The guy like snapped his arm in half on the field 2 weeks ago, and they're like, no, he's actually fine. He's better than ever. And he'll be back soon. He's just not playing. Like if you have Goddard, you cannot plan having him going forward for a while. Finally a down game for AJ Brown. But DeAndre Swift continues to dominate that backfield and kind of get unlucky. I mean, he's running cold. He's running real cold in the red zone. So you're obviously starting him, but wow, his role is really, really appealing.
Do the Eagles players know to go down to 1 yard line? Because Devonta Smith went down the 1 yard line. We've seen, I think, AJ Brown do it before. Every single one of these guys goes down to 1 yard line.
It's true. That was very upsetting for me in a couple of leagues.
If they go down at the 3, 4, or 5, that's a spot where like you obviously are not pushing from there. Maybe DeAndre Swift is in and gets a carry from the 3 or 4. He's very good, has a good chance at punching it in. But every single one of their plays that ends within the 5 does not end at the 5, 4, 3, or 2. They always end at the 1.
Thanks.
Did anybody else spend part of this game looking up Kyle Gibson's advanced metrics from last year? I got really distracted. I was arguing.
Nah, I played him in DFS once and he got shelled. I don't need the advanced metrics.
Cardinals, please sign someone legit. Podcast. We'll be back with more legit games right after this. Your final helping of NFL football on Thanksgiving night is a battle of NFC West foes as Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers travel to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Plus, the holiday weekend wraps on Sunday evening in a star-studded matchup when Lamar Jackson and the Ravens face Justin Herbert and the Chargers in Los Angeles, California. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Yeah, I try to never get distracted during this podcast. People keep texting me about Kyle Gibson, though. I'm like, first off, I'm podcasting. Second off, you're wrong. Third,
wait, what are they wrong about?
Nothing. They're right.
It's November. It's November. Come on, man. You gotta log off the baseball.
No, they're right. I've shut off the messaging. We're on to Arizona. The Rams and Cardinals meet up in the desert for what is shaping up as a pick'em between two difficult to peg teams. Denny, have we seen enough to declare Kyler Murray in every week QB1 moving forward, or was it like this week we got 32 teams playing? I was having trouble getting him in the top 12. I must admit.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, on the bye weeks, yeah, it's kind of a slam dunk. I think so. The Cardinals ended up with only 16 points against Houston, and I covered that game, and you would have guessed, well, this team definitely scored 30 points, like 30 plus points, because they moved the ball pretty well until the red zone, and then Kyler made mistakes. Other people made mistakes. So it really limited them. It really hurt their point total, obviously. But Kyler, I think is a not wide receiver one, QB one. He has 7 design rushes over his 2 starts, 14 total rushes in those 2 games. The Cardinals have been at 0% dropback rate over expected. So neither run nor pass heavy. I will say, just from an offensive standpoint for Arizona, Kyler's rushing is sort of dinging the target volume for a guy like McBride and James Conner, for instance. And also James Conner's losing out to Tony Jones for pass catching. So this offense, I think, is a little hard to figure out at the moment, but Kyler should be good floor wise.
So the floor is very strong for Kyler. The ceiling could maybe prove to be a bit elusive, but
yeah, right.
He's really, really good in like that QB 11 to 16 range right now, and maybe some room to grow. Kyle, I asked Denny about the Rams offense without Cooper Kupp on Monday's podcast. How do you see things unfolding this time around? He hasn't been declared out yet for Week 12, Cooper Kupp. Certainly seems like it's trending that way. Is he the same thing?
Great for him playing, right? That's what we'd say.
Same thing. Puka dominates. Tutu Atwell actually produces. Tyler Higbee occasionally catches a ball and falls down? Or has this offense changed since the first time Cooper Kupp was injured? It's just not good right now. Kyron Williams
Well, it wasn't
back.
great before
No,
Cooper
that's
Kupp
true.
came
It was
back
better
anyways.
though. It was better.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'd imagine it was better before Cooper Kupp's probably noise. Cooper Kupp is very good and would help on offense. My projection is that it stays extremely similar. Like you said, Puka dominating, hit a 32% target share and 34% of the air yards, like Devontae Adams level numbers when we didn't have Cooper Kupp in the lineup. Like you said, Tutu, absolutely back to life. A 23% target share, 14 PPR points per game. He was a week in, week out wide receiver too. And I'm still projecting that. I mean, they have lost talent at receiver, talent being sort of a loose term, but they traded away Van Jefferson. They have lost players to throw to that aren't these two guys. So maybe this is probably most beneficial for the ancillary pieces, Tyler Higbee and Tutu Atwell, because they can move to the forefront, specifically Atwell. But I think Tyler Higbee goes from being entirely unplayable in the Kupp iteration of this offense to still probably tight end 2, but he was hardly even a tight end 2 with Kupp out there. So that's probably the biggest change, him and Tutu. Depends what we see with Kyron Williams as well. I believe he's expected to play, but at least keep it locked into Rotoworld for that one.
It's been pretty Joverish for Tyler Higbee. And yeah, Denny, Sean McVay basically keeps guaranteeing Kyron Williams is going to return. It is early in the week. Sean McVay is kind of one of those coaches who says a lot of things, but it does seem like he'll be back. Will he immediately be a safe RB2? He was producing as like an RB1 almost before he went down. But now they have a much deeper backfield than they did before he went down. Darrell Henderson's been fine. Royce Freeman's been fine. Or do you think we can get Kyron immediately back into the top 24?
I think top 24 is pretty safe for Kyron. Just because, man, it was bleak. It was bleak looking into the metrics of Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson.
See, when I said they were fine, I just meant they were taking touches. They were not horrible in normal box scores. The advanced metrics were
really bad stuff. Like so, I do think Kyron just comes in, probably, could depending on game script, could see 20 touches in this game. The Rams, by the way, run heavy of late. Here are some for the class. I'm going to read you their recent drop back over expected numbers. -3% against the Cardinals in week 6. -8% against the Steelers in week 7. Week 8, they were 1% over, 8% under against the Packers in week 9, and then 12% under against the Seahawks this most recent week. They're trying to hide Matthew Stafford because he is so bad this year. Terminal decline, as you said, Pat. That should be good for Kyron Williams.
Matthew Stafford's terminal decline should be good. Come on, man, I have a heart. It's good for Kyron Williams.
Hey, man, I didn't trademark it. I didn't get the T-shirt made.
Wait, listen. We didn't get those printed. Actually, we were just getting a price quoted.
Oh, you were just texting me.
We were just getting a price quoted. And
you just sent it to your tattoo artist. He didn't actually put it on you yet.
Oh, I see.
And what Denny is in my Monday article, I said that his play has been in terminal decline this year. It certainly looks that way because it was looking that way down the stretch last year before he got hurt. It was looking that way in 2021 when they won the Super Bowl. Remember, they went super mega run heavy at the end of 2021, as Kyle might say.
Yeah.
They've been hiding Stafford for a while now, and it just does not seem like that genie is going back in the bottle. The Colts and Bucks meet up for a surprisingly low total showdown, at least in my opinion, at 43.5, Kyle. The Colts are 2.5-point home favorites. Again, it's Tuesday. Is it safe to say no looking back for Jonathan Taylor after he really dispatched Zach Moss to the fantasy dustbin in week 10?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we see that usage, which I don't see why we wouldn't, it's like top 5 RB numbers for Jonathan Taylor. An 89% snap share, 88% carry share, and 79% of the routes. Those are like unsustainably high. Those are like closing in on the best of Christian McCaffrey level numbers. Probably won't be targeted on a per route basis as much as McCaffrey, but overall it looks like he's clearly the guy, not just the guy, the only guy they're going to use in this backfield. And his route rate and his snap share have gone up in quite literally every single game he has played this year. Every single game, they give him more snaps, they give him more routes. It's hit a peak in that 100% seems like it's the cap. I've run the numbers. We haven't gotten anything higher. He's pushing for it.
Nice. Oh, yeah. I was not texting about Kyle Gibson there. I promise.
We could see it in your eyes. We saw the reflection of the Orioles hat in your irises or pupils.
No, I was trying to look up something with Jonathan Taylor and thought you were going to keep talking, but good breakdown there. Denny, Colts receivers, Josh Downs. He's been the wild card here. We don't know if he's healthy. Targets have been kind of all over the map. This is an amazing matchup for both Michael Pittman and Josh Downs against the Bucs. Did not pass funnel in week 10, I believe. They resumed funneling big time in week 11 against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. How are we feeling with the Indianapolis passing attack in this game?
Good, but the Colts have made a huge effort to be run first of late. The Colts have the 5th lowest pass rate over expected in the red zone. They have the 2nd lowest neutral pass rate since week 8. So they're really trying to establish it with Jonathan Taylor.
And really trying to hide Gardner Minshew.
That too. And this is matchup wise. This is horrible. Like the Bucs, I diced it every which way, trying to find some daylight. But the Bucs are just really good at defending the run and not so good at defending the pass. So that should set up well, I think, for Downs if he can come back. Apparently, he's been struggling with a knee injury since August or July or something.
I think it was literally not trying to one up you. I think it was since June.
Since June, okay. So it was since minicamp
of his sophomore year in high school. Actually, is when they first traced back the injury.
So it'd be cool if he could run full complement of routes here, because the Bucs are not only are they bad in the secondary, they're particularly bad against the slot where he operates from. Michael Pittman, you asked about Pittman. I'll give you some numbers about Pittman. 35% first read target rate this year. That's 9th highest among wide receivers in the NFL. He's 2nd among all receivers in red zone targets. But listen to this, guys. He has only 2 inside the 10 targets. I don't know what's going on there. He basically, I guess, is either coming off the field or just not really part of the plan inside the 10. He doesn't. I don't think that he has a tremendous ceiling.
He's not a dog levels receiver. He's not someone you're going to and he's not fighting for tough looks.
But here's what he's getting. He's getting layups. He's getting the easy stuff. And if he can combine the layups with a long catch or 2,
won't do it.
Well, I don't mean an 80-yard over the shoulder.
I think it's like 9 catches, 9 yards per game. 9 yards per catch. It's like shockingly low.
I mean, but it works for fantasy.
Does it? For fantasy, yeah, obviously.
No, for fantasy, I don't care about the Colts. I just sound. It definitely works for fantasy. So this should be a situation where Minshew drops back quite a bit. But I can't get it out of my head that the Colts are just trying to be super run heavy.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. It is something's got to give in this matchup because the Bucs stamp out the run and do not stamp out the pass. Kyle, is it wide receiver 3 Dunzo for Chris Godwin? He's not bottoming out. There's no ceiling week after week after week. It's 5 catches for like 45 yards, 6 catches for 61 yards, no upside whatsoever. Are we getting him outside the top 36 a receiver?
Yeah, on the course of the season, I said this last week, but his expected fantasy points looks wide receiver 3 adjacent. It's right inside the wide receiver 3 range, and he's been performing under expectation, so he hasn't quite gotten there. But if you look at just the first half of the season versus the second half, he has gotten significantly worse in every metric, both volume and efficiency. His yards per route run has dropped by right around 1. His yards after the catch has plummeted. He's also earning fewer targets as a percent of the team's throws, and the air yard share is down. So he's earning the ball less. He's doing less on a per catch basis in terms of yards after the catch, but he's also worse in yards per route run by a wide margin. Like we talked about early in the year, he seems like he's sort of already on the decline. And then the first half through 11 weeks for second half splits make it look even worse. Like I think he's just trending towards done.
Yeah, the classic has not been the same since that injury. And it hasn't been the same also since the greatest player in league history left and Tom Brady. That also hurt for Chris Godwin. And it's sad. He's going to go down as a fantasy what might have been. He could have been an all-time great, like PPR type player.
Yeah.
And just too many injuries. In a game fraught with meaning for the AFC South, the chugging Jacksonville Jaguars visit the surging Houston Texans as roughly 1-point favorites, Kyle. Fantasy managers finally got the Calvin Ridley blow-up outing they were waiting for. Any reason expected to be a theme going forward? Have we found anything new in the data? You and I talked about this in our chat. Denny and I talked about on the podcast. What's the latest in the hourly blow-by-blow in Calvin Ridley? And please, God, keeping it up.
So I'll start with the bad because it gets better. The bad news is he still played almost exclusively on the outside. His slot reps didn't really change much. And his ADOT was like, I think within a yard, identical to what it's been throughout his season to date. So playing on the outside, running the same depth of routes. I will say the good news is that when Zay Jones plays, defenses definitely treat Calvin Ridley differently, and it allows the team to still use him slightly differently. His rate of double teams is like halved in 2 full games with Zay Jones. His rate of press coverage falls down. And to his credit, he also just destroyed bad cornerbacks versus the Titans. Nothing to do with his usage. He just played one of his better games. He went from week 3, I believe it's week 3 to week 8 or 9, getting 10 contested catch targets, did not catch a single one of them. 0 of 10 on contested catches. He got both of them for nearly 50 yards in week 11. Like, he just played better to some degree. Defenses also treated him differently, or the defense also treated him differently. So I think there's a combination of both going on. Like, if he plays better, he's going to produce better. But also when there's more for defenses to focus on, it's going to be easier for him to play better. And this looks like a shootout. This looks like one of the probably one of the best games of the week. So I'd say even if he doesn't quite get that same treatment versus the Texans defense, the overall scoring environment is wide receiver 2 worthy for Ridley. Also, don't be surprised if he goes 2 for 10 and no touchdown.
It's true, but I had been waiting for a stat like actual hard data that he was defended differently with Zay Jones in the game, and he was, per your stats.
Yeah, no, that's great, Kyle. I was looking for that, like press, so less press and fewer double teams, and I don't think at this stage in his career he can beat that sort of coverage. So that's good to know.
He really never could. That's why they got to move him around. He's a tactician. Like
he's not a big dude. He's sub 200, I think.
Yeah, and I was also sub 200 after he lost that bet. Am I right? No, I am not right. I am being informed. Denny, what's going on with the Texans pass catchers? I feel like this is a weekly theme for the show. Like, we don't know who's playing. Noah Brown seems like he might be out right now. When they're all playing and healthy, it seems like for some reason they not phase out, but ramp him down, even though he seems to be clearly the best playmaker in this receiver group, better than Nico Collins even. Any trends, anything interesting to highlight with these Texans receivers?
Yeah, I mean, it really Noah Brown's status matters a lot here. I will tell you that Nico Collins led the team with 11 targets in week 11 against the Cardinals. It didn't result in much, only 7 catches for 65 yards, no touchdowns. Look, he had a 27% target share. Air yard share, which is solid, but until you consider Tank Dell saw a 42% air yard share. I do think we're beginning to see major separation between Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and I hope it keeps up because I have no Nico Collins and I have a lot of Tank Dell. But I will say that you know, for one reason or another, Noah Brown matters a lot in this offense, and I'm not sure that Tank Dell is seeing a 40+% air yard share if Noah Brown is in there, because Noah Brown is seeing some deep shots, making some long catches. You know, you're starting both. I do think that Nico Collins could be the odd man out to Tank Dell and maybe even Noah Brown, because first of all, they're still run heavy or balanced. Like the Texans are not just ripping it; they're not just airing it out. If you look at the raw dropbacks or whatever for Stroud, they look fine, but this team is being conservative. So I do think that in a situation where they can be conservative, not all these guys are going to get home for fantasy.
Denny, for some reason when you were talking, I just couldn't stop thinking about, the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud debate about, well, Bryce has no supporting cast. And then all year that's just been assuming that CJ Stroud, Nico Collins had ever been good before CJ Stroud arrived in town.
Look, if Bryce Young, if Bryce Young were on the Texans, you'd say, oh, he doesn't have anybody to throw to. He has Nico Collins. He has Tank Dell. Who's Tank Dell?
But we digress. Kyle, the Devin Singletary backfield takeover is still moving forward. Even Dameon Pierce comes back this week. He didn't seem particularly close to returning last week.
Yeah, that was kind of my takeaway from last week's practices as well, that I don't know if he'll be back, but he's just been straight up better this year, especially in recent games. He's been really good in recent games than Dameon Pierce has. He has 9 carries, Devin Singletary has 9 carries of 10+ yards in the past 2 weeks alone. That is more than Dameon Pierce has all year. Dameon Pierce has been a better, more elusive tackle breaker, but he doesn't have the next gear to actually do anything with those broken tackles. Kind of like the Najee Harris story. Harris is big and hard to bring down, and he breaks a lot of tackles. Then he gains 1 extra yard after that. Pierce is better than that, but it does sort of allude to the fact that the broken tackle itself is not the goal of the carry. It's the long carries, and he doesn't get the long carries, whereas Devin Singletary pretty much isn't breaking tackles. I mean, he's not breaking tackles the rate Dameon Pierce is. We don't care if he's breaking off long runs. So I think he's earned the right to start. We'll see how stubborn this team is, but it may not matter. Like you said, we may not have Pierce back this week.
They were stubborn to begin of the year. They've been adaptable of late. So there is hope there in that Texans backfield. The Chiefs are surprisingly heavy 9-point road favorites, at least in my opinion. It's surprising. Against the fighting Antonio Pierce's. Denny, we just saw them hang tough with the Dolphins on the road. What shape has this post Jimmy Garoppolo Vegas offense taken? 3 games now, kind of strange. 2 really bad teams they faced in the Giants and Jets, and then 1 really good team in the Dolphins, and now another really good team in the Chiefs. So hard to know what is because of matchups and what is just because of vision. But what is this offense looking like without Josh McDaniels?
Yeah, it's been a little bit up and down. Since Aiden O'Connell took over, they've had 2 games where they were 9% under their expected dropback rate, and then against the Dolphins, they were 9% over their expected dropback rate. So that was a little surprising. I think the main point is that Josh Jacobs is going to continue to see a lot of volume, and Devontae Adams is once again the unquestioned alpha. He has a 50% air yard share, unbelievable, with Aiden O'Connell under center, and a 33% target share. You felt horrible about starting Devontae Adams for most of the season. I think you can feel pretty good, especially when they're going to have to chase points like they are in Week 12.
Kyle, I wrote this on Monday, so AKA before the Chiefs and Eagles played, and I just wrote, Kyle, break down Chiefs Monday Night Football performance, and brother, shut out in the second half for the 3rd straight game.
Wow.
Fewest second half points in the entire league per ESPN during the broadcast. I did like a triple take at that stat.
My guess maybe on that, it's that the same reason Mahomes has no 4th quarter comebacks this year. Obviously, you'd still like them to put up points in the second half, but maybe that's related to the fact that Mahomes, Lamar, Purdy, and Dak Prescott all have no 4th quarter comebacks. They don't let teams get close to them.
True, but they do.
But man, please put up some points in the second half.
You
don't need to do 0. You don't need to do 0, man.
It wasn't Mahomes' fault. I mean, he hit MVS for like 218-yard touchdown, and he just dropped it.
God,
and then on that 4th down play, he threw it right at Justin Watson, like batted it down, like he was breaking up a Hail Mary. He's like, get out of here.
Brutal.
And Pat Mahomes like, well, what? Like, maybe just catch it.
It was an unbelievable throw. Like that it should have been caught.
I mean, they had no business converting that 1st down. None. It is like the sole objective. You could see it. It's the most hilarious looking screenshot of like, let's line up 8 guys on that 1st down line for the Eagles defense. And somehow Mahomes, I believe he escaped pressure on that one, still gets it to a guy dead center in his hands. Oh my God, dude. Playing with the Plumbers has not worked the past few games.
When I saw it was MVS, the second I saw it was MVS as the target on that deep ball, it was Jover. There was no way he was going to come down with that ball. Just none. That's not the kind of ball that MVS has ever caught in his life.
Not even kidding. He catches that ball like 1 out of every 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
which is just stunning. 1 out of every 3 or 4 of those.
For a deep outside speedster, you would think that maybe
need that number to be more like 80 to 90%.
Oh, yeah, and in the press conference after the game, Mahomes actually said something like maybe I let him a little too much.
God bless you, you adorable sweetheart, man. Because so many like Brady gets that guy cut before the press conference.
He does.
Yep.
And he's right. The team gets better then instantly once you get him cut. Yeah. But I don't know anything to say. Any takeaways?
I mean, that's basically it. Takeaways be angry about how this team has managed their receiver room. Not only the spending on the receiver room, like I get going back to why they traded Tyreek Hill is going to be very expensive. And Mahomes clearly, I mean, like this game aside, they're still 7-3 or whatever. So like clearly he can make do with these guys, but then investing in dude, spend a 1st round pick on one of these receivers, please. God.
Tyreek Hill.
Anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating for someone watching the best quarterback of my lifetime have to throw to MVS. So not only is it frustrating to see their spend or lack thereof on receiver. But then in-game management, we've had Rashee Rice's route rate drop in 3 consecutive weeks. They are preventing him from hitting the rookie wall or some nonsense. And in turn, that has meant Justin Watson is getting more and more and more routes. He has over 40% of the team's air yards over the past 2 weeks. Half of the yards that move past the line of scrimmage, just shy of half, move to Justin Watson. And the worst part is that means I have to think about starting him from a fantasy perspective.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Thank God.
You don't. What were you going to say, Denny?
Deal.
I actually read before we went on the show that Tyreek Hill is having a billboard put up in Kansas City saying, "Miss me yet."
Yes, and it's total excuse making. But when I was watching this game, I was like, man, this salary cap system makes it impossible to pair an elite QB with an elite wide. It's not totally impossible. Saying that, how come Tom Brady never has a good receiver? Like, why does Aaron Rodgers have one good receiver ever? And it's just so hard. And the Chiefs have prioritized their defense, and it's working.
Yeah, had they spent all that money on Hill, it would have left their defense completely barren, or it would have prevented them from boosting the offensive line. So that's a good point, that just like the money manipulation that the league has does sort of prevent us from seeing like a great pairing that lasts a long time.
I want the Kansas City defense to be bad again.
I know, that's the worst part. It'd be great if they were bad.
Please be bad again. Everyone liked it better that way, including your fans. And you still won the Super Bowl. Who cares?
Yeah. Why'd you do this?
Why did you do this? Suddenly, 2 of the more entertaining teams in the league, the Bears and Vikings, square off in Minnesota. I don't know if the Vikings are actually entertaining. The Vikes getting 3 or 4 points at home. Kyle, is some of the bloom off this Josh Dobbs rose, or can he revive after a shaky Week 11 against the surging Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, front to back for the season, he hasn't been elite, but I don't think that was obviously never the expectation was never that he would start, so let alone be elite. But on the year, he is 24th, I believe, in EPA per play. Oh, he's somewhere between 24th and 27th. EPA, CPOE, PFF passing, sitting around low-end starter level, but he has been better since joining the Minnesota Vikings. And most importantly, from a fantasy perspective, don't care too much how his passing looks, because another 8 carries, 21 yards, and a touchdown last week. As long as he keeps doing the rushing stuff, passing be damned, you can pretty much bank on him to fall somewhere in the top 15. If the passing doesn't come together, that's how he gets to about 15. But he's running, I mean, as much as any quarterback in the NFL is. So for fantasy purposes, passing can go either way. We'll take it. We'll leave it.
Dobbs has at least 6 rushing attempts in 6 straight games.
Denny, you mentioned Josh Dobbs rushing attempts. The Vikings backfield, Ty Chandler is officially involved. Alexander Mattison, though, I think was over 20 touches in Week 11 against the Broncos. We were kind of begging for more Ty Chandler, but Alexander Mattison still holding his own. Anything interesting, anything to cling to in this Vikings backfield? Any reason to believe Alexander Mattison won't be the 1A? Will this increased Ty Chandler usage keep up? What do you think?
Look, Madison against Denver had 18 carries and actually did something with them, which is weird. But also the Denver rush defense is not good. Chandler saw 10 carries. His biggest run was that fake. What was it? Fake punt, right? He took that for like 25 yards. So I don't know if that's sustainable. But his
I don't
numbers,
know if 20-yard fake punt carries are sustainable. We're looking into it, of course, running the regressions, but we'll see.
It was also 30 yards, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And then the pass catching work. Madison ran 20 routes against the Broncos to only 7 for Ty Chandler, but Ty Chandler saw 4 targets on 7 routes. So possibly. Because Ty Chandler is a good pass catching back. So possibly that is the plan. Like, okay, he's not going to be out there running 100 routes, but we are going to like scheme up some stuff for him. Chandler, I suppose is like a deep league flex. Like if you have like multiple flex spots, you could do worse than throw him in there. But Madison is clearly the lead back headed into Week 12.
And unfortunately, that's where I arrived with Chandler. He's like on that RB 3-4 borderline, aka like a second flex. And you would like to see the role grow, but Alexander Mattison is, to his credit, holding on. He's doing a good job holding on and making it difficult to take touches away from him. We already talked about Justin Fields in the Monday podcast. Any of you have any quick thoughts on the Bears offense with Justin Fields back? The Vikings have played a lot better defense the past 2 months, but not like a shutdown unit. Any thoughts on this Bears offense?
Nope. Yeah, they're sort of Eagles-esque, and we know exactly what's going to happen, especially now that we saw them come back use DJ Moore like he's been used all season, use Justin Fields in an optimal way, which is to design runs for him. But also he did his own part in when he was scrambling. He kept his eyes downfield. I thought it was eye test, a pretty good return for him. So they're a relatively predictable team. Like they might be volatile, but we know where the ball is attempting to go in terms of DJ Moore, then Cole Kmet, then why bother? Don't really worry about the rest. And Khalil Herbert probably in the backfield, maybe more exclusively with Deonta Foreman, I would say unlikely to play.
I'm really sorry, Pat, but I just want to mention, I mean, DJ Moore, crazy metrics, 55% air yards, 40% targets last week with Fields back.
I was working pretty hard to get him in the top 12. I think I was like the wide receiver 14 right now, but I think he is for real with Justin Fields, both before and after the injury. It's a real thing. The ever spiraling Los Angeles Chargers host the Ravens as roughly 4-point home underdogs. Denny, how do we expect targets to shake out in this Ravens offense with Mark Andrews out for the season? Oh, now they're acting like he might come back, but whatever. He's out for the season. I know. And people are very excited about Isaiah Likely. I'm not so sure. Odell Beckham had a blow-up game. Zay Flowers never does anything useful. He scored a 60-yard touchdown that didn't count. What do you think is going to happen without Mark Andrews in this Ravens skill core?
The Ravens were doing so well in not messing with us with the Andrews injury. Like they were very straightforward. Like, a horrible injury, so he's out. But then, like 8 days later, they're like, no. Actually, it's a good injury. He'll be fine. He's not.
No.
My guess is it's like, hey, if we make a Super Bowl run, we'll roll him out a week before.
Yeah, sure. He'll be questionable for the Super Bowl and then not play.
Exactly. So Isaiah Likely it must be picked up. Probably should be starting 12-team leagues, but I mean probably. But he's not.
He should be picked up for sure.
His targets per route run is way down this year. He's not seeing a whole lot of action, but still, I mean, just from an efficiency standpoint, I don't really know what's going on with him, but it's not good. Odell Beckham's not running a lot of routes still. But his targets per route run, unlike Likely's, is really good, like really high, like one of the highest among receivers over the past month or so. So I think that you can start him without him getting an increase in routes. For looking into this game, I was like, okay, are we going to need more routes for OBJ for this to be a thing? But no, I think that his role is stable in this offense as the downfield guy. The air yards are looking real good. Real solid for OBJ, and you take away all the targets and distribute them, all the Mark Andrews targets, and OBJ is going to end up with some.
Zay Flowers, just real quick. I mean, it has not happened for Zay this year.
Well, that's not fair though. That we wouldn't be talking about that if that phantom holding call.
Even that's one play. I mean, one play all year. He made a play once. Cool. Sorry.
I feel like he's made more than one play this year. I'm struggling to remember them, to be fair. But.
Yeah, I know, but I know they would have been a lot nicer had that touchdown counted and had that holding actually been a hold. But we digress. Kyle Austin Eckler with the slow run heard around the world in Week 11. It was hypnotizing. I was mesmerized. Did the metrics look much better? The raw box scores don't look good. He's not been efficient as a runner. He's for some reason not commanding targets, even though every Chargers pass catcher is injured. What is the state of the Austin Eckler union?
Yeah, as far as a runner, we saw this last year too. Like his pure between the tackles rushing efficiency wasn't great last year. Really hasn't been anything special this year. He's 18th in rush yards over expected, 36 in success rate, 36 in PFF's yards after contact per carry. He's never been the most elite runner between the tackles, but he's been better than this, and it's been going on for 2 years. I think at this point, we kind of know what he is, where he is capable. Like, he's not dead last by any means, any of these metrics. He's just not near the top of the league, not particularly close. He's average to maybe slightly below average between the tackles player, but he plays in an offense we expect to put up points. They like to use him in the red zone, and I have faith that the targets will come back. I know we haven't had like the 12 target game that we got earlier in the year last year when he was the only guy available to them, but he's damn near the only guy available to them at this point. So I do think the targets will come back, and as long as the team keeps putting up points, the touchdowns will be there. Pat, for your personal league where you play with the 100-yard bonus, I don't know if he's getting 100 yards, though you collect them both rushing and receiving combined, correct?
You do.
If you say on DraftKings where you need the 100 yards on one specific category, not sure we're getting that anytime soon because he's not really the peak of his rushing ability anymore.
Yeah, it's yards from scrimmage. Thank God. Keaton Mitchell seems like he's capped in that 8 to 10 touch range. Is he usable as a flex? Probably, but what do you guys think on Keaton Mitchell? I don't have any strong, powerful Keaton Mitchell thoughts.
Well, he's basically made what's his name? Justice
Hill, yeah.
He's basically taken his spot in this offense, and he can do a whole lot more than Justice Hill can on just a few carries. But he's not going to impinge on the Gus Bus at the goal line. And that's what matters for our purposes. Like Gus Edwards is going to continue owning the analytics geeks.
He will.
And what can you do about it? But yeah, Keaton Mitchell has a lot of variance. Just to put it mildly, you might get nothing out of him, and you might get one long run.
Well, there you
go. I think it's really tough to bet on that too, because like you said, we're capping him probably like 8 to 12 touches, and even if he gets the long run, like unless it gets into the end zone, it's 4 fantasy points, which isn't that big of a deal. Yeah. So I mean, last week he had a 5% target share, less than a third of the team's carries. Like he is a true backup, and we're still seeing some usage for Justice Hill. So I don't think he's startable, especially with 60 to 70 teams playing this week. So
fantasy football should look into there being a difference between good and bad things, by the way. Where they a negative 1 yard Deontay Johnson catch is like as many yard points as like a really rugged, like 10-yard Derrick Henry run. We should look into that.
I don't think we should look into that.
Anybody real quick have any thoughts on the Chargers offense at large? A lot of injuries, a lot of drops, a lot of sadness. Really tough matchup in the Ravens.
Donald Parham ran about 65% of the routes, I believe, had a 15% target share. That's pretty good. He wasn't out there for every route, and I know we got stolen from with the Stone Smart long touchdown, but it was clear Parham was their number 1 tight end. He's usable. I'm not gonna have him ranked tight end 1, but we're at the point where like a lot of people have lost a lot of usable tight ends. So
real quick, Donald Parham or Isaiah Likely this week?
Likely for me.
Okay, Denny Carter. That was quick, Kyle.
If Everett is out, then Parham.
Okay, thank God. Yeah. I'm going Parham. Oh, yeah. If Everett's out, Kyle.
I just meant Parham's unplayable if Everett's in the game. I just meant this is all under the assumption that Everett doesn't play. I'm still going Likely in that scenario.
By the way, I tweeted this, so sorry to repeat my joke, but Travis Kelce had very powerful Gerald Everett energy on Monday night.
Yeah, it was a tribute.
It was a touching tribute to Gerald Everett. The streaking Denver Broncos catch the quarterbackless Browns as roughly 2.5-point home favorites. Kyle, is it accurate to say Javonte Williams lost every down duties in Week 11? You're going to tell me it's inaccurate because you're going to say he never had them to begin with. You were teaching me good on the Monday night chat we had.
Yeah, you got it. Next question. Go ahead, Denny. No, thanks for stealing my whole thing. Yeah, I mean, you did sum it up quite well, is that throughout the year, he is, especially as we got later in the season, pretty much got an entire stranglehold on the carries. They don't give the ball to anyone else on the ground, but they're not using him as their primary passing downs back. They still target him on early downs, but in a game that looks more like it did last week, you're in more of the 2-minute drill type of situations, and he does not play those. So he was always like a 2.2 down back, and they just didn't have as much of those early downs in normal situations. I'm still, as Denver 2.5-point favorites at home, even though Cleveland defense is very strong, I'm going to take home favorites with a lot of carries for Javonte as an RB2.
This is a strange line and game. I don't know what I would establish this line. The Broncos should be favorites. By the way, there used to be years where you'd see 1 or 2 sub 40 totals a month. Now we get like 4 or 5 sub 40 totals a week now.
Yeah. I mean, this year I'm going to chuck it up to the quarterback play or lack thereof. This is like, I think there was a year where like Drew Brees, Tony Romo, and someone else got hurt all in the same year. This is like as bad as it's been since then. Probably worse, honestly.
Denny, how grisly are the DTR details? Was he good, terrible? He was apparently concerning enough that they signed Joe Flacco.
You feel good. You feel good for the young man because they won.
Yes.
But wow. Adjusted yards per attempt, 2.79 against the Steelers. When he was kept clean, guys. So this is just giving him the benefit of the doubt. Kept clean in the pocket. 4.2 yards per attempt.
That's like a carry. It's like similar to a carry.
It is so bad. It's so good for Njoku, by the way. So good. Njoku is like peak PPR scam right now with DTR. I don't really foresee DTR being able to hang on to this job for the rest of the season, but it makes this environment against the Broncos so ugly. I wouldn't blame folks for looking elsewhere, looking for a reasonable replacement for like Amari Cooper.
Oof, that's tough to hear.
I know. Yep. It's not good.
Tough to hear, Denny. But,
it is. I know.
I feel like
Yeah. I don't know. I feel maybe I'm being dramatic here, but it's.
You just did very dramatically get into the camera.
I'm telling you, it's over. It's over.
Yikes! That's a shame. But yeah, they signed Joe Flacco. They seem very concerned. We are very concerned. I would take the under on 35. I don't bet the game total will probably come down. Yeah. I do not bet. Do not take my advice. The fighting Danny DeVito's host the bottomed out New England Patriots as 3-point Jersey favorites. Denny Carter. The game's in New Jersey. There's a lot to unpack from Tommy DeVito's Week 11 performance against the Commanders' awful defense. Was that solid play in any way sustainable, or should we focus more on the 9.5 sacks?
It's wild, but the Giants were actually really aggressive against Washington. Maybe they've just had enough of being everybody's whipping boy. They were 15% over their expected drop back rate against Washington. That's unimaginable for this team. Danny DeVito, Tommy DeVito's A-dot.
We've gotten everyone on this show now. We've got us all.
I know.
His A-dot jumped from around 7 to almost 10 in Week 11 against the Commanders. When he was kept clean in the pocket, his adjusted completion rate was 74%, and he averaged 7 yards per attempt. So I think we got something going with him. And by the way, the Patriots are 20th in pressure rate, so he should have a pretty clean pocket this week.
Denny, I think you hit on something there. Just by the way, where when you have your backup quarterback, maybe just don't run out the surrender cobra and never attempt to do anything.
Yeah.
Never throw the ball. Like, this guy is on an NFL roster. I mean, I'm sure he can throw the ball 40 yards. Maybe just let him try it. Because this tendency to just, we can't turn the ball over. Okay, well, congratulations then on losing 24-3. It's like, wow.
As long as you don't consider punts a turnover, despite them turning the ball over to the other team, you can prevent turnovers. But that's really how you should conceive of them.
You gotta introduce variance. If you are a heavy underdog, yes. if you are a bad team with a questionable quarterback, you gotta make it weird. And I think maybe the Giants got that message last week. They can carry it over into this week.
Good luck to the young man against Bill Belichick. Kyle, it is Tuesday, and we do not know the Patriots quarterback. We do know it doesn't really matter, right? There hasn't been much difference between Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones things in the past. I mean, I guess Mac Jones is better, but what do we even say about this Patriots offense?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that Bailey Zappi has going for him is I think he looks like a better deep ball thrower. He's had a few misses, only misses really on deep balls this year, but he was pretty solid at it last year, and something Mac Jones has never done. In the end, you're taking some, leaving some with he's a better deep ball thrower. He makes more mistakes. Mac Jones also makes a lot of mistakes. They're both very bad. Like you said, I will say on their careers, or at least over the past 2 years, that is, Bailey Zappi actually is better in CPOE. He's better in EPA. They're both bad, but there's maybe some deep ball juice. What do you do with that, though? You're not playing Devontae Parker. So, and Demario Douglas isn't really a deep ball guy. So maybe we go out and see a 55% air yard share for Devontae Parker this week. And then teams go back on bye one more time next week. Maybe then he jumps into wide receiver 4 territory, but don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out with these decisions.
A 33.5 game total currently for Patriots Giants. Really, really good stuff. Not the final game of the week. The final game of the week is the collapsing Tennessee Titans. It's roughly 3.5-point home favorites against the league's worst squad, Kyle, the Carolina Panthers. Is Will Levis crashing to the point that we can no longer trust Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy, or is he keeping those boats afloat, say, as a top 20 running back, a top 24 receiver?
I think I'll make an exception for them this week because the Panthers are the worst team in football. They can't sustain their drives. They give the ball back to their opponents in advantageous positions. And that's good for the offense, for the opposing offense. Will they do anything with it? It's difficult to say because Will Levis hasn't been particularly good. I don't know who they play in 1 week. Whoever they play, they'll be better than the Panthers. My safe bet is that they'll be better than the Panthers. That's a spot where you could convince me I'll have Derrick Henry ranked as the RB22. He is purely a 2-down back who isn't breaking long runs at the clip he used to behind a horrific offensive line and with not like a quarterback that doesn't strike fear into the hearts of opponents. So this week is the exception to the rule. I think going forward, he'll probably rank RB2, but outside the top 18, depending on the matchup, could push as low as 22, 23. DeAndre Hopkins is still the focal point of the passing attack. 31% of the targets last week, 44% of the air yards. He hasn't had below a 39%. His air yard shares are hilarious. He has one game below a 34% air yard share. 34 would be like the highest in the league. I'm going to guess he finishes as the air yards champion as a cut of his team's air yards. I guess he kind of falls in the same boat. It's a decent game for the Titans. He's a wide receiver too.
Yeah. By the way, 40% of the Titans' air yards is 14 yards.
So come on, man. Low blow.
No, he's right. He's right.
By the way, they get the Colts next week, so maybe they can actually get some momentum these next 2 weeks. Okay. Then this is not a joke. In Week 14, the Titans play the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. ESPN is announcing that they are now solely direct to consumer. They can't make any ad money on that game. No, we love ESPN. We love our friends at ESPN. We actually do. Please don't go away. I'm not even saying that sarcastically. Please, we want cable to survive. Denny, what changed for the Panthers with Frank Reich back at the play calling controls? A lot of targets for Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders back involved. That was my uneducated look at what changed when I watched this game. What does the data say changed?
All right, here goes. We're back to establishing it. My 11% under their expected dropback rating against the Cowboys. That's way, way different than the past 3 weeks with Thomas Brown calling plays. Bryce Young continues to sort of sack himself. A lot of self-inflicted mistakes. Lots of checkdowns. The Thielen thing apparently depends on the kind of coverage that the other team plays. Yeah. If they're playing man coverage, then Thielen's going to see all the targets. If they're playing zone coverage, then Thielen is basically unplayable in fantasy.
What is it this week?
It's a little of both. It's a little of both.
Exciting.
It's hard to say. Okay. It's hard to say, really. So, I mean, you probably have to start him anyway. But, yeah. I mean, it's so like this is bottom barrel type offensive football that you're going to see in Carolina. Just that there's just not much there. You can't start either running back. You can't. I mean, gosh, you can't even start like Tommy Tremble with the other guy out, with Hayden Hurst out.
I was gonna just say, I wonder if Denny remembers the other guy. Let's see if he does.
Hayden Hurst. Yeah. I mean, like I know he got away with it with the touchdown. Not mad about that at all. But yeah. So there's just not much. Jonathan Mingo is seeing some air yards, but wow, it's not happening.
He's on that Denzel Mims
in the NFL versus fantasy points over expected. He's the least, the most negative.
Yes, right. And okay, this is the difference. The Stroud Young thing. If Jonathan Mingo was on the Texans, he'd be cooking. Okay, and he'd be if Bryce Young doesn't have Jonathan Mingo, if he had Jonathan Mingo, he'd be good. That's
so true. It's so true. By the way, I was about to say I was getting my Titans reserve receivers mixed up. It's Terrace Marshall's in the Denzel Mims career trajectory. He can't even get on the field. But yeah, Jonathan Mingo would be totally cooking with CJ Stroud. You're correct. Wow, what a depressing team. We should never end on a game like that, but we did.
I mean, unfortunately, they're all like that.
This team.
Wow.
This team is in a dark place because Reich's done, obviously.
He is. That guy just resigned, man. Like, have some dignity.
So whoever gets the job next, they're also done.
Yeah.
Like whoever gets it, doesn't matter who they hire. He's the person's finished after
Tepper has it's impossible. I actually understand being a hands-on owner. You spend like $1 billion on a team. You're not going to just like leave it to all these other, but like, man, you got to do it. Like David Tepper has ruined his investment.
Yeah.
Because he can't stop. We got to take Bryce Young. And all the football guys are you sure? They ask him like every day for 4 months. Are you sure? David,
because there's this kid, CJ Stroud.
Yeah. And I understand wanting to be a hands-on owner, but boy, did you screw the pooch on that one.
Yes.
And a lot of other things that you've done also. But we're done. The show under an hour and 20 minutes today. I'll probably take it over an hour and 20 by talking here aimlessly for 50 seconds.
4.
Yeah. Yeah, regression files. Denny, when are the regression files coming out this week?
Wednesday morning, and then my pass run funnel piece will be up on Friday.
So that's going weekly now, huh?
Yeah, we've decided to make it weekly.
We have decided to make it weekly. Kyle, start him, sit him. I hear is on Friday this week as well.
I'll drop it Thursday morning.
Thanksgiving
it'll
Day.
come out before Thanksgiving games. Yep.
The rankings are dropping Wednesday evening, so you can get a jump on your Thanksgiving Day lineup decisions. Keep it locked to Rotoworld. A lot of injury stuff. Keep it locked even on Thanksgiving Day. Stinks for us, but we will be working. We'll be writing up the games. You need something to do while you're around the house, check it out. We'll still be churning out news. So for Denny, for Kyle, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll be back this weekend.